Welcome to the College Admissions Process Podcast presented by Prep Expert. Prep Expert offers live online SAT and ACT courses with the best score guarantees, instructors, and curriculum. Go to prepexpert.com to guarantee your child's success. Welcome to the CAP, the College Admissions Process Podcast. I am your host, John Durante, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you today Eddie Ramirez, who's an assistant director in the Office of Undergraduate Admissions at UC Davis. Eddie, thank you so much for being here today. How are you?
Good. Hello. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited.
It's an honor and pleasure. I want to let everyone know that back on episode 71, that's the first time we had a representative from UC Davis on the podcast. Again, that was episode number 71, which was done a few years back. So I'm happy to have you here, Eddie, just to keep the information fresh. So since then, Eddie, have there been any significant changes or updates in the UC Davis admissions process or policies that prospective students and their families should know about?
Yeah. So again, that episode, if I remember correctly, aired back in 2022. And since then, at least when it comes to the first year admissions side of things tend to be pretty consistent. You might see changes, if anything, on the application as to like what information is being asked and the structure of the application. One thing that has or tends to change throughout the years is the AP credit, and that students, if they score 3 or higher, of course they do get some sort of credit for the AP exams. It's just that some may be actual course credit or some may just be units. A lot of the changes actually happen in the transfer requirements, where students may be looking to enter for a specific major, and those requirements may change year to year, as in what the courses that they need to complete, specific GPA requirements they have to meet. So that's something that's very important for students to keep checking year to year, as it may change.
Well, that's great insight. So again, there are changes related to AP credit along with transfer requirements. And I always say that it's very important, students and families, to always check the university's website for the latest information. And hopefully this conversation is going to prompt some great follow-up questions if you meet people like Eddie from UC Davis on campus or at a local college fair. So Eddie, can you provide an overview of the University of California system? So the entire system itself for our listeners, highlighting what makes it unique and differentiates it from other systems.
Yeah, so UC Davis is one of the 9 undergraduate serving campuses, part of the UC system. We are all over California. The northernmost campus is UC Davis, and the southernmost campus is San Diego. And the UC covers ground everywhere in between. One thing that sets us apart from other institutions in the state, and I'd say even the country, is that we are research institutions, which means that we are at the forefront of innovation, not just in the state, but in the country and in some cases the world as well. And what's great for the students and for your listeners is that the UC system does give students the opportunity to participate in these projects. So, in some cases, you may hear in the news of research being done like in medical fields or environmental fields as well. And if it comes from a UC campus, there's a good chance that an undergraduate student was also part of that research in some form. And not only that, but we do also have a large alumni network. So students who come to one of our UC campuses, once they graduate, they'll have a large network to be a part of, whether it's still within the same state here in California or across the country or even in other parts of the world as well.
Well, we appreciate that. So UC Davis, as you mentioned, is your northernmost campus of 9 UC schools. You also talked about undergrads getting involved with the research, not to mention the alumni network, again, with 9 UC schools. Now, I know UC Davis has so many popular programs, including biological and biomedical sciences, engineering, social science, and business, just to name a few. But Eddie, how does UC Davis distinguish itself within the broader University of California system, and what unique characteristics, programs, or strengths set UC Davis apart from the other campuses?
Yes, as you just mentioned, we do offer several majors here at UC Davis. A lot of the majors you can find across the UC system and even in other universities. But a couple of areas that students tend to focus on when coming to UC Davis is actually in preparation for what the next step is. So students tend to go for our biological sciences or even our animal sciences in preparation for our veterinary school or our medical school. Obviously, those two are graduate programs that students will still need to apply to, but students who come to UC Davis go into these programs in preparation for the next step. Another thing that I believe also sets UC Davis apart, coming from actually Southern California, was that the campus and really the city here of Davis really focuses on building inclusive communities for everyone. You hear students who come from the local Sacramento area who, even though it's so close by, they will come to campus and stay on campus and live there the 4 years because they just like the environment that they're in, which is great for students coming from other parts of the state and the country that they feel like they could be at home once they're at UC Davis. And not only that, but the programs that the campus has to offer can really prepare students for, again, whatever their next step is, whether it is a graduate program, an internship, or getting to that career that they've always dreamed of.
Well, I appreciate you mentioning that there's a focus on building inclusive communities within your campus. Students love the environment that they are in, and it's perfect that you're mentioning this because I just read that your retention rate is 91%, which is well above the national average. This represents the percentage of students that return after that freshman year. So, Eddie, what support systems are in place to help first year students transition to college life at UC Davis, both academically and socially?
Yeah, so what something that I've always considered to be important in retaining students, whether it's their first year or a transfer student, is it's for them to find their home away from home, as I've mentioned. It is important for them to feel like they are part of that community. And at UC Davis, we do have our living learning communities, which a few that I want to highlight, for example, our Chicanx Latinx House, our University Honors, our African and African American learning community, which gives students from far and from local the opportunity to feel like they are meeting new people. They are within people who also understand their own backgrounds, which makes them feel safe and involved. And speaking of involvement, there are also several clubs and organizations on campus that make that student become involved with everything, whether it comes with their interests or what it comes academically. And we also have, for example, our seminar series, which again gives students the opportunities to participate in various different classes that, again, help with that retention rate for the students.
Well, we appreciate that. And I'm going to repeat again you talked about your living and learning community, which helps students meet like minded people, like minded students, classmates, if you will, once they're on your campus. And I just want to emphasize that I think it's very important for students and their families when researching colleges, look at the retention rates and ask the question, what is it that the college does to help transition students from high school to whichever university you end up at? So, again, that living and learning community, bringing students together from day one to foster that sense of community with like minded people, which of course helps with that 91% retention rate. So, Eddie, can you walk us through the holistic review process at UC Davis? And what specific factors and attributes do admissions officers like yourself prioritize when evaluating so many applications?
Yeah, so I smile a little bit because that is a question I get a lot as working in admissions is like what does UC Davis look at when it comes to the application? And when it comes to the first year process, at least, what we encourage students to do is really put as much information as possible so we get the whole picture of the student. When we're looking at applications, we really try to take into consideration not just their academics and their extracurriculars, but also where the student is coming from. Because we understand that in some cases, a student may come from a more affluent background, which they may have more access to resources compared to a student who's maybe coming from a rural area in San Bernardino County or Riverside County. which they may not have access to some of these resources or even be aware of resources available to them. So we do take that into consideration as we're looking at applicants, and making sure that they are truly well-rounded, and also if they do come to UC Davis, that they will be a representative of UC Davis and will be able to handle the rigor of attending a campus like Davis, because that is something that students need to keep in mind. Is that coming from a high school or sometimes even a community college, there are changes to that once they attend a university, and we are looking to students to show us that they are capable of handling the work. Again, as the students are filling out the application, it's always important to really show us the best of themselves.
Oh, we appreciate that. And we talk about it all the time that the application is a marketing package. Obviously, you're going to look at that transcript to see if the students can, in fact, handle the work once they're on your campus. You certainly don't want to accept students that are not going to be able to do so, as that wouldn't help the student or the college itself. But they also are looking students at that overall application to see what have you done outside of the classroom? What kind of community
Mhm.
member are you going to be? What kind of a classmate are you going to be? How are you going to contribute to this wonderful thing that we call UC Davis? Now, the college application process obviously can be overwhelming for so many students and their families. So, what are some common mistakes applicants make during the application process, and how can they avoid them?
Yeah, I get it that the application can be a little overwhelming, a little stressful. I remember when I was a student uh, coming out of high school and I was applying to the UC system, I was definitely stressed out being a first generation student. And once again, when I applied as a transfer student, it was still the same thing, even though I had already seen the application already. Sometimes when students are going through the application, a common mistake that they may make is that sometimes when it comes to letting us know about different organizations that they are a part of, they tend to write too much about the organization instead of what the individual has done within the organization. Uh, for example, sometimes students will write about volunteer work that they've done or their organization does, and it's an amazing piece. The organization does a lot of wonderful things with helping out their community, but then I don't really get an understanding of why the student even chose to be part of that organization, or what they did and what they learned. So those are some of the factors that could really help us out as admissions officers to get to know the student more than just getting to know the organization. Another mistake that I believe students make is not understanding what can be considered some of this extracurricular work. There are times when students will put the bare minimum, things that they believe are only academically focused, that's going to help them out. But again, we are looking for students who are well rounded. So if they are able to tell us about the sports that they were a part of, or clubs and organizations they were a part of outside of their high school or community college, that's also very important. And another thing I'd like to say with that is also adding work experience. Sometimes students believe that if the work experience doesn't directly tie into the major that they're applying for, then there's no purpose in adding it. But there is a purpose to it. One, it is time spent away from your schoolwork. So whether you were working a part-time job for just a couple hours throughout the week, or working several hours throughout the week, it still impacts your academics in one shape or form. And also, it could help us understand why maybe you didn't do as many extracurricular activities if you were so busy with work. So it's always important to add as much as you can into the application, and let us then decide if it's something that could really benefit you or not. There's nothing on the application that can hurt the student, it can only benefit you.
Well, so many great points there. And I love how you talked about the fact that sometimes students speak too much about the organization that they're a part of, as opposed to what they did within that organization. So, students, don't forget to speak about why did you choose a particular organization or club, and how did you contribute? Remember, in addition to making sure that you could handle the work once you're on their campus, admissions representatives are truly looking to see the type of community member you're going to be. So avoid that mistake. And again, we appreciate that insight. So the personal insight questions, or PIQs as they are commonly referred to in the UC system, are a key component, right, of that UC application. So, can you share what UC Davis looks for in PIQ responses and provide tips on how applicants can effectively convey their experiences and strengths?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, yeah, when it comes to the personal insight questions, this is where students tend to be the most nervous coming into the application because they feel like they might be getting judged. And I am here to say that when it comes to the PIQs, it really is there to supplement the application. So, again, we get to see your academic history, we get to see your extracurricular activities listed on the application, but the PAQ is for us to get to know you a little bit more. When I'm speaking to students, I tell them to treat it a bit like an interview, right? I can't interview all the thousands of students that apply to the university, even though I wish I could get to know them better. So,
Hmm.
this is the chance that I have to do so, to let me know who you are. And another piece of advice that for students is that treat it like a conversation. I've seen PIQs that are very well written using words that I have never even heard of before. And they have me looking at a dictionary trying to figure out what that is.
Hmm.
And as your listeners can probably tell, I am just a person as well. So I understand that when reading these applications and the personal insight questions that students have a huge background to present on the small space that they have. So write it like a conversation. Talk to me. Don't try to write a research paper because again, this may be the opportunity that you have and the only opportunity you have to present yourself that way. So take advantage and take advantage of the full word space as well. There are certain students who will write just a couple sentences, and that's the best PIQ that they can, and others will write the full square of words and not write enough to let me know who they are. So take advantage of it,
Hmm.
have people proofread it, and make sure it really answers the questions that they're asking. Sometimes students, when they see the question, they think that there's going to be one question that may be worth more than the others, but we treat them all equally. So we always advise students to answer the questions that they believe they can provide the best answer for.
Well, those are great pieces of advice. I particularly like when you said to treat the PIQ like it's a conversation. Students, if you use a word within your PIQ responses that you wouldn't ordinarily use in a conversation, don't use it in the PIQ, as people like Eddie in the admissions office can see right through that, and it doesn't necessarily give a positive connotation. Is that right, Eddie?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Again, we're reading thousands of applications, so we want to make sure that as we're going through these, that we actually get to understand what you're trying to tell us, not just having to look at a dictionary all the time, like I mentioned.
Absolutely, and we appreciate that. And Eddie, how does UC Davis evaluate a student's academic record, particularly with the test free policy in place? And what aspects of a student's transcript and coursework are most important in the admissions decision? And of course, just a reminder to all of the students and the families listening, the UC system right now is in fact test free, meaning that even if you submit tests, you're not going to look at them. Correct, Eddie?
That's exactly right. And that is a question I do get from families when I'm out on the road is, well, how can my students showcase their academics without the test scores? And what I tell them is that, again, we look for the student who is well rounded. So it's not only about the academics, but also that they take advantage of the resources available to them at their school. Sometimes it could be that they took these extra classes that maybe weren't part of the A through G, but they did make a note of it as well, or were they part of the different clubs and organizations that are available at their school? Another uh, big thing that we encourage students to do is to take advantage of their AP or IB courses if they are available at their school. Sometimes students tend to think that just by getting the best grades possible, that would be it. But we do get to see what APs are available at their specific high schools. And when it comes to students who sometimes come from like the transfer route who try to submit it as well, again, same thing applies. It's about how well are you doing academically and what did you do outside of the classroom.
Well, we appreciate that, Eddie. And I know that you mentioned the A through G criteria, which in the UC system you use as your overall application review process. So I know a lot of people probably within the state of California are familiar with that, but perhaps others from outside of the great state of California are not. So could you just give a brief overview of what the A through G criteria is in your application review process?
Yeah, so when it comes to the A through G criteria, we're looking for specific subjects that the students must complete in order to be eligible for admission to the UC system. As you mentioned, for the students who are already in California, they are pretty familiar with it because some of them tend to align with graduation requirements for high school students. Some that I just want to highlight real quick are, for example, your history requirements. We do require students to complete world history and US history or some form of American government as well. Also, for example, completion of math, 4 years of English, 2 years of a science. So some of these requirements do have a time component to it that students must also follow. As I mentioned, like 2 years of sciences. So it's important for students who are applying, even from out of state, that they check to see if they are meeting these requirements before they submit an application. And of course, if you are a California high school student, even though most likely you're already meeting these requirements through your high school graduation requirements, it's still important to look because we do have what we call like recommended classes. So, for example, even though the minimum requirement for a language is 2 years, it is recommended that students take a third year. Having that extra rigor in your schedule really sets you apart as we're looking through the thousands of applications that we receive because it shows that you're going above and beyond what the requirements are.
Well, that's terrific. And as always, I always put the Office of Undergraduate Admissions in the show notes. So obviously, I'll include a link to the A through G criteria. And Eddie, if there's anything else that you want to share with our listeners, just send it to me. And of course, we'll make it available in the show notes. Now, do you use the student's high school GPA as indicated on their transcript, Eddie, or do you recalculate using your own metrics? And if so, what do you look for from a student's academic record and how do you evaluate them?
That's a great question. So, as we're looking at the GPA specifically, we use both the non weighted and the weighted GPAs because we understand the students do, in some cases, take several honors level courses, AP, IB, whatever the case may be. And we want to take that into account when judging the academic rigor of the student. As we're going through it, that is how we get an idea of how, well, again, above and beyond the student has gone past just the regular requirements. When it comes to looking at the student's academic record, we do get to see all of the classes taken as the student has to provide this academic history through the application. So in some cases, we do get to see improvement. As your listeners, some of your listeners may know, we do not calculate certain years, like for example, the freshman year of high school and senior year of high school in the GPA calculations. But if a student shows improvement even from freshman year over to the senior year, that is something we take into account even if it's not necessarily calculated within the GPA. And of course, within the years as well. If a student had a poor first semester of math in their sophomore year and they were able to make it up and excel in their second semester of that same year, again, we do take that into account to show that the student is progressing. So, all of this, again, is important for the students to show as much as they can within the application. And same for students in the transfer route as well. For those of your listeners who may want to go the transfer route, is that we do take into account students who are progressing throughout the time that they attend the community college.
Well, we appreciate that, particularly when you talked about the ninth grade year, but also the senior year, right? Now, both the ninth grade and the senior year, I'm going to repeat what you said, they are not used in the GPA calculation. Obviously, ninth grade is a transition to high school. The grades in senior year are not available when you're reviewing applications, most likely, correct? And so it's the 10th grade and 11th grade that are used for the GPA calculation. However, what I want to add as part of your holistic review, I want the students and parents to understand you do look at everything. But again, for the purpose of the GPA calculation, you're only looking at the 10th and 11th grade. Is that right, Eddie?
Yeah, exactly, and it's great that you point that out because we do have students that once they are admitted or they believe they're going to be admitted, they sometimes slack off a little bit in their senior year, and we're looking for students who are able to keep up with their classes and pass those classes. So it's important for students to keep that in mind as they're applying. That just because you already submitted the application, it doesn't mean you can get your foot off the gas pedal. You got to keep going and try to fulfill as many of those classes that you already listed on your application as possible. And even if you plan on doing extracurricular activities during your senior year and you listed them, make sure you follow through because at the end of the year, once those admissions decisions are done and we're looking at your transcripts to see if you're able to keep it up. There are some students who do get rescinded because they weren't able to keep up that academic rigor throughout their senior year.
Well, that's a great message and a great reminder, students, to keep building those academic ramps, keep putting your best foot forward, not only in your first 3 years of high school, but even in that senior year. So, again, we appreciate that, Eddie. And what are some of the future plans and even long term vision for UC Davis in terms of growth, development, and any other new initiatives?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for UC Davis, we are always looking to reach populations that we may have not reached before. I do a lot of recruitment in Southern California. I've kind of been all over Southern California, actually,
Hmm.
and it is my goal as a part recruiter is to reach some of these high schools and community colleges that maybe are not necessarily reached by other institutions and even within the UC system. Because I believe, and our office believes, that everyone should get access to education, and we should give students the opportunity to get to know who we are, and really give students the opportunity to achieve their goal of reaching higher education. So that is something that we continue to do as a campus: is try to reach these underrepresented groups in these locations that, again, may not have had a lot of recruitment in the past, because we are focusing on growing a campus, not just in our high school populations, but also our transfer populations. A lot of students now are coming from high school are seeing the benefits of going to a community college for a couple of years before they go to a university. So we are starting and have continued to have programs that really encourage students to go the transfer route as well, such as our transfer admissions guarantee. And again, we try to promote these programs even for high school students so they are aware that there are more pathways than just the high school pathway to get to Davis.
Oh, we appreciate that. And I was just curious, as part of your institutional goals, is there a cap in terms of the percentage of students that you can accept from out of state?
So even though we do receive a lot of students' applications from out of state and international students as well, we are a California institution, so we do prioritize California students. Uh, Again, that doesn't mean that students from other parts of the world and other parts of the country cannot apply. We do encourage students to do so. But it is a reminder that we do serve our California high school students and transfer students first, and that's why they tend to have more resources available to them, such as the transformation guarantee that I just mentioned for our transfer students. That is for
Hmm.
students who attend a California community college. So that's what we try to push forward more and really serve California population.
Understood. And thank you so much. And, a lot of students ask about demonstrating their interest. So, Eddie, what are some of the things that students do to demonstrate their interest in attending, of course, UC Davis? And does it ever come into play at any point during your overall application review?
Yeah, so for some of your listeners, you may have seen a representative from UC Davis in your hometown at your local high school fair or transfer fair as well. We really encourage students to attend these events and to not just attend, but ask questions. That is why we are there, so that we are able to provide as much information as possible, not just to the student, but to the students' families and guardians and everyone who may be involved in the process of getting the student to UC Davis. So I really encourage students to attend events and also to reach out to our admissions office for questions that they may have. We also host webinars and other presentations throughout the year, so not just in the fall when we're doing most of our recruitment, but even in winter and spring. So keeping that engagement up is helpful for us to continue providing these events to more and more students. And in particular, for as to how it plays in the overall application review, while I may not necessarily remember every person who comes up to me at a
Mm.
specific high school fair or transfer fair, it is helpful in that if you have questions for me, I now have that connection with you too, right? So if you have questions about um, your application, or maybe you feel like you filled it out incorrectly and you have some questions about that, or you have questions about the process, reaching out to us and having that connection is definitely helpful, as we do receive messages, hundreds of messages throughout the cycle. So it is important for you to have that connection. It makes it easier access to us so that we're able to respond to you a little bit faster.
Well, that's great insight, Eddie. And this has been a terrific conversation. Before I get to the last question, I always have to ask, is there a question that I did not bring up or a topic that we didn't discuss that you'd like to share with us now?
Yeah. So for students, one thing I guess it might even be more of a piece of advice is that whether you're coming from high school or coming from a community college or another university, I always encourage students to take a look at the schools that they're applying for, and do your research to see what programs and majors are available, and if they really go towards your future goals, if you already know what those are. Uh, Even though all of the nine UC campuses may have the major that you are looking into, they may all have strengths in different parts of that major. So, doing your research beforehand and really seeing how this can benefit you can be very helpful. And not just that, but also on the other campus resources that are available to students. Because in some cases, you may be looking for something in particular that could be helpful for you as you're going through the experience of 4 years or 2 years if you're a transfer student. So doing that research beforehand can really help you out in preventing a shock once you are at the campus.
Well, that's great advice. Always important to do that research and really reflect on all of the different campuses that you visit, as there's so many great schools out there. And this has been a terrific conversation, Eddie. Unfortunately, it does lead us to the last question, which is, what are your top three pieces of advice that you would provide a student and their families getting ready for the college admissions process?
Yeah, so I do have one that a piece of advice as someone who works at the admissions office for a campus is that don't be scared of the application. As we've said before, people who read the applications are, in fact, people. They are human. So as we're going through it, we understand that people go through different things in their life, and the more clear, the more information you write in the application, the better it is for us as we're going through it. So don't be scared of it. It's part of it. It's part of the process. But as someone who was a student myself, a UC student, another piece of advice would be to again ask questions about student life, and more importantly, take a tour. Go and visit the campuses. That is something that helped me out quite a bit when I was looking to transfer to a university. Was, do I actually picture myself on this campus? And I know sometimes students go by the name of a campus or the prestige of it, but sometimes they may not actually see themselves being there for the 4 years or 2 years, whatever the situation may be. So take a tour, but maybe I'm being biased because I was a tour guide myself back in my undergrad days.
Hmm.
And finally, the last piece of advice would be, enjoy the process. The world is your oyster right now, whether you're a high school student
Hmm.
getting ready to apply or a transfer student. There's so much before you, and really enjoy this feeling, and because before you know it, it's all going to be gone. So it may be stressful, but you'll be all right.
Well, those are definitely great pieces of advice, Eddie. Can't thank you enough for being here. I'm so happy as I know that this is going to help so many students and their parents as they navigate the process. I hope to have you again. Thank you for your time, Eddie.
Thank you, John. Happy to be here.
Our pleasure. And to everyone out there, good luck with the college search. Take care, everyone, and best wishes. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the CAP, the College Admissions Process Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please don't forget to tell a friend and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. I am your host, John Durante, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the CAP. Hey, podcast friends, if you've been enjoying the College Admissions Process Podcast, I'm excited to share my new book, Straight from the Admissions Office, Insider Strategies for College Applications. It's packed with insights and tips from over 250 podcast episodes with admissions professionals designed to make the college process less overwhelming. Whether you're a student, parent, or college counselor, it's a valuable resource for navigating the admissions process. By grabbing a copy, you're also helping to support the podcast. The links are in the show notes. Thank you, and best wishes to all with the college admissions process.